Long before there were pharmacies, there were healers. Mothers, fathers, and neighbors who turned to the earth for wellness. Welcome to the Reality of Herbal Therapy podcast with Jim Applegate. Each week we explore the plants, traditions, and time-honored remedies that connect us to that ancient wisdom, so you can bring it into your modern life.
Hello there again, my friends. So last week we talked about the muscular system, and I talked about all the muscles and the different kinds of muscles. You got the smooth muscles and other muscles, and I touched on the cardiac muscle. And then I realized later, I'm like, I really didn't talk much about the heart. And the heart is something very, very essential and important to our health. So I figured, why not just do a whole episode on the heart? So here we are. Let's talk about your heart. So if you don't know much about the heart it's actually an electric pump that runs constantly. If you think about electric pumps, any pump that runs occasionally will actually wear out within 10 to 15 years. And yet our electric pump in our chest runs nonstop from, I think it's a few hours after conception, the heart is formed and it begins pumping blood, and it will pump for the next 80 to 90 years of our lives. So the heart is like one of the central major organs. It pumps the blood through our body, which gets oxygen to throughout our body, but it also carries nutrients from the stomach to everywhere our body needs it. So it feeds the cells and picks up waste and then brings it back. So the heart is it's an amazing, amazing thing. And that heart muscle is just so amazing, that it's an electric pump sitting in the center of our chest that keeps us alive. I love thinking about and talking about the heart. So, when they talk about muscular systems, the heart actually is its own kind of muscle, the cardiac muscle, so that it can continue working and continue pumping. And that's why I wanted to kind of talk about the heart, because your heart is, you want to take care of your pump so that the pump keeps pumping throughout your life. And the reason, part of why it's an electrical pump is that there are electric impulses that gives it its rhythm. So, if you watch in TV shows and everything, or anywhere where they do an EKG, where they look at your heart, they're looking at your heart rhythm. So there's a big pump, there's a big contraction, and then a release, and then a small contraction. And so if you watch, you can see the big contraction, and then the rest, and then the small contraction, and then a rest, and then the big contraction. And it's that rhythm that kind of helps move the blood through our bodies. So the heart has 4 chambers, four places. So it's kind of like the shipping and receiving for the blood. So you have the receiving part, which is the upper part. So the blood returns back to the heart. It goes into the upper part. And then the lower part is the shipping, where it pushes it out, and it pushes the blood out from the heart to past the lungs to pick up oxygen, past the stomach to pick up nutrients, and then to send it on throughout the entire body. And the amazing thing about some muscles in our body are very stiff, they're very firm, but the heart muscle, that's why it's the cardiac muscle, is very different. It's really strong, but it's not stiff. It's fluid. It's able to move, and it's very responsive to all sorts of things that happen in our bodies. So like when we're scared, it starts pumping more blood, so we get more oxygen, so we can move faster or quicker, or when that adrenaline gets pumping, it pumps up the heart can respond almost immediately to any stresses. If the body needs more oxygen, it responds to increasing blood flow to get the oxygen to where it needs to be. It's an amazing thing. When the body needs rest, the heart slows down. It's just the thought of how amazing our hearts are. So to talk about the heart, you need to talk about arteries and veins. So arteries are what carry blood away from the heart. So like I said, it goes past the lungs to pick up oxygen, past the stomach to pick up nutrients, and then on throughout the body. And then once it goes out to the end of the arteries, then you have the capillaries, which exchange the oxygen in the blood for the spent carbon dioxide, and it swaps it out, and then it goes back into the veins, and then the veins go back to the heart, and then it just does it again. So let's talk a bit about what good circulation feels like in the body. People that always have really cold, they're always saying, "Oh, my hands are always so cold, and my feet are always just frozen. They're icicles. They're little ice pops or whatever." That's a good sign that the circulation isn't working as well as it could. Lynn and I went somewhere once and we met this lady, and we were shaking hands, and I shook her hand, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, your hands are so warm." And her hands were very, very cold. That's a sign of, I've got really good circulation, whereas her circulation is not as well. So if you've got cold hands, cold fingers, cold toes, it's a sign that, your circulation may not be working as well as it should. Another sign that your circulation is working properly is you have a consistent stream of energy. And if you need to get up and go do something, you do a little bit of exercise and it takes a minute to recuperate, those are signs that your circulation isn't as well as it should be, because you're not replenishing that oxygen as fast as you should. Light exercise shouldn't wind you. If it does, then your circulation is having a hard time getting the oxygen to those extremities. So another sign of your circulation functioning properly or not is your clear thinking. If you're thinking if you can think really well, if you've got like a brain fog, or it takes a minute to go out and find the information you're looking for, that's something that to look at to see. The circulation could be a cause of that. And generally, brain fog, brain function is generally a sign that there's not good blood flow, good oxygen and nutrients getting to the brain. So, you want to look at your circulation and help improve that. So what are some things that put stress on the heart? So the heart's constantly under stress. I mean, just the fact that it's constantly working, it's under stress. It's working. It's doing its thing. But some things that really put a lot of stress on the heart, physical stress, is inactivity. If you sit too much, if you have a job sitting at a computer all day, then that can be a contributing factor to heart issues, or sitting on the couch or anything like that. Those things are really tough on the heart. And so you want to get some exercise, get some moving. Another thing, I kind of touched on it, overexerting without giving yourself the proper time to recover. That's a really key thing, is your heart needs to recover and to get back into that rhythm that it had. Because if you're constantly shifting the rhythm, then the heart's constantly having to keep up with that and catch up to it and stuff. So another thing is weight. Weight has a huge effect on the heart. I saw something several years ago, actually, that said if for every pound of weight you gain, your body has to put on 5 to 7 miles of capillaries to take care of the weight, the added weight that your body put on. So your heart has to pump an extra 5 miles, 5 to 7 miles, if you have, for every pound. So for somebody that's 100 pounds overweight, that's 500 to 700 more miles of capillaries that the heart has to pump that blood through. So for a great thing to think about for losing weight is just to take a lot of the stress off the heart. The heart doesn't have to pump as hard and to work as hard. So those are some of the physical stresses on the heart. But actually, because the heart is an electrical pump, our nervous system is also is electrical. And so you get your electrical impulses and stuff. So whenever we're worried, if we're overwhelmed with grief, have anxiety, stress, anything like that, it really takes its toll on the heart, because you're basically using up all of the ability for the body to run the electrical system of our body. So like when somebody talks about heartache, that's a true thing, because you're basically robbing the heart of what it needs to run that electrical part of the body. So another thing that really, really messes with the heart are processed foods, sugars, the overly processed fats, any, things that Dr. James talked about, excitotoxins. Caffeine is horrible on the heart. Basically, it stimulates it with no reason to stimulate it. So then the heart is like trying to like deal with this extra caffeine, this extra jolt of energy, but the body doesn't need it. So caffeine is really rough on the heart. Another thing that the heart requires is potassium. Potassium is what gives that electrical system. It kind of like makes that connection. So if you have too much salt and not enough potassium, the body uses that as kind of a pump to deal with blood pressure and several other things. So if you don't have enough potassium in your body, then your heart has a hard time working. Basically, so potassium also helps with the contraction and the relaxation of the heart. So it helps with that pumping action that it does. Potassium also helps with the nerve signals. So ways you can tell if you're deficient in potassium is if you get muscle cramps. Muscle cramps are a sign that you have a mineral deficiency. And especially at night, like if you get muscle cramps while you're sleeping, that's when your body is using minerals. And so it's pulling minerals from everywhere it can. And the muscles don't have enough, so they cramp up. You get those Charlie horses in the night kind of thing. That's mineral deficiency. So a fluttery sensation in the heart, basically the rhythm is off. You know how we talked about you've got the big pump and then the small pump kind of thing going on. And when you get that fluttery thing, or where it's irregular, sometimes it can be painful, but basically it's not pumping correctly. So that's minerals, and potassium will help a lot with that. So let's talk about the star of the herbal show when it comes to the heart, and that is Dr. James's formula, heart. So heart was partially developed for Dr. James as well as for his father. Both of them had that irregular heartbeat, and if it didn't take much for them to get out of balance, and when they were out of balance, it would actually cause that irregular heartbeat would actually cause discomfort. I could always tell when Dr. James was having an issue. He'd have his hand in his fist and like pushing on his chest, trying to get that relief. And so whenever that would happen, I would just hand him a couple of heart capsules and be like, here, let's fix the problem. And it would fix it really, really fast. And he didn't have to take heart all the time. It was just whenever his heart would get into that irregular state, whether it was physical stress or emotional stress or some dietary stress, whatever the stress was, it would just kind of like mess up that rhythm a bit. And it took a little bit to get back on track, and heart would always put it back on track and help give his heart what it needed to have that proper rhythm. So heart basically helps that with the rhythm. It helps with the muscle. So that, that muscle is constantly contracting and relaxing. And so if the heart doesn't have everything it needs so it can contract and relax enough, sometimes you're not getting all the blood pushed out of the heart, or, there's valves and all sorts of things that go on in the heart. And the heart formula gives your heart what it needs to be healthy, to help, the blood move between the chambers so that it's functioning properly. It helps with the the circulation through the body. So, we talked about some of the signs that you don't have proper circulation. Heart will help encourage that healthy circulation. So when should you think about taking heart as opposed to, say, blood wash or anemia, which are all blood formulas? So anytime the heart is feeling stressed, if there's stress in your heart, whether it's, some of the things we talked about, physical stress, the emotional stress, the food stress, you'd want to take heart. Blood wash, and you can always take them together. So blood wash and heart together will help with circulation. It will help clean it up so that you have better circulation. It helps clear out any of when you get gunk in your arteries or your veins, you kind of get the clogging. The way clogging happens is because the veins basically get irritated. There's something flowing through your blood that scrapes along the veins. And so it gets irritated and it swells up a little bit. And then it catches everything that, all the stuff that just scraped the veins, it catches all of that and it starts to build up and back up. And that's how you get clogged veins and stuff. And that's why blood wash is so amazing for circulation. If you have like a family history of heart issues, so like Dr. James and his father both had that irregular heartbeat, that's when you'd want to take heart. If you've got that irregular rhythm going on, and it wasn't that it was pain, it was kind of like pressure. So it wasn't heart attack pain, it was pressure because it wasn't even, because when that rhythm is uneven, that's when you don't get the full emptying out of each chamber in the heart. So heart helps bring back that rhythm, helps the emptying of each chamber. So it's helpful in keeping the heart functioning properly and keeping your circulation going properly to help with clear thinking and having the energy and the warm extremities. So another formula we add on with heart is tissue mend. So tissue mend is basically it helps with rebuilding. If your heart is feeling kind of weak, any muscle, anywhere else that you've been injured, basically your heart has to pump extra blood to that area so that it gets extra nutrients and oxygen to heal. So tissue mend is really helpful for that. I kind of touched on heart, and blood wash, but I didn't talk about heart anemia. So when you'd want to take anemia is, so you have the heart and your thyroid is actually just above your heart. So if your thyroid is struggling, then your heart could be struggling as well. And that's when you'd want to take heart and anemia together, is basically your blood is not as healthy as it should be or something like that. So if your blood is too thick, then the heart has to work harder to push the blood through the body. Anemia will help normalize it to where your blood is the right consistency that it needs to be. Anemia is not like a blood thinner or a blood thickener. It brings the blood to the correct consistency to help it move through your body. So let's talk about some things healthy habits you can do every day. One of the really important key things to do with heart health is movement. Getting out and going for a walk. And this one's coming, the rebounder. The rebounder is amazing. Like, we talk about it moves even if you're just slowly bouncing, you're moving every muscle in your body, which includes the heart. It moves the lymphatics, clears out all the gunk. So, just consistent movement will make a huge difference. Like me, I'm in the office quite often in my chair, but I have a rebounder in my office just so I can get up once or twice a day and just bounce on the rebounder for a few minutes just to keep the heart healthy and to keep everything, my entire body working properly is through getting that movement. And you don't have to go like for long extended periods of time for movement. 10 to 20 minutes a day is plenty to just keep your heart in tip-top shape, to keep it working. So, talking about blood consistency, when you're dehydrated, your blood gets thicker. So you want to maintain good hydration. And that's pretty much key in just about everything that we talk about is hydration. If you get dehydrated, there's also a whole myriad of issues that can come up just simply from dehydration. And one of the things about dehydration is minerals can't move through your body without liquid. The water dissolves the minerals and carries them throughout our body. So you could have plenty of minerals in your body, but if you're dehydrated, your body can't use the minerals. And then sometimes you can get mineral crystallization, which can cause issues, like kidney stones, or when we talked about fibromyalgia, that uric acid in the body. So hydration and minerals are really, really key. Another thing is to get enough proper rest. And it's something I talk about all the time, that getting that rest is important because it gives your heart that downtime. It's still going to be pumping. It's still going to be working like crazy. But as we rest, it brings down that heart rate so that so the heart can work on repair and building up. So another thing to do to keep your heart healthy, like as far as a daily routine kind of thing goes, is, and there's different ways they talk about this, is it's called like the miracle morning in some places, or a daily routine, or an AM PM routine, or you have a routine that is either prayer, meditation, some personal time, some time with gratitude, some time within a core book. So when I talk about a core book, it's a book that exudes your core morality, and that you spend some time with your core book, whether it's the Bible, other scriptural references, the Quran, whatever that core book is that talks about that gives you your moral center. Spending some time in that is amazing what that does to your heart. It gives your heart a relaxing, it releases that stress. So it's an amazing thing. So movement, hydration, and rest are really key to health in all sorts of many ways, but it also very key to your heart and keeping your heart healthy. So there's some things to avoid, of course. We know smoking is really rough on the body. I saw something recently where they were talking about in the 30s and 40s, the attitude about smoking and the attitude about smoking now. It's quite an eye-opener. But we know now that smoking is really, really rough on the heart, because basically you're not giving your heart enough oxygen. So your lungs have to work harder to get oxygen, and your heart has to work harder to get that oxygen to move it throughout the body. So smoking is really hard on the heart. Anything with excessive caffeine, like nowadays energy drinks are all the rage, and they're so popular. And I saw a story recently that was just devastating. A young girl, like in her mid-20s, was very much into fitness, into working out, going to the gym, but part of her gym routine was energy drinks. She'd have an energy drink before and an energy drink after working out, and she made a big deal of her energy drinks and how much it helped her. And in her mid-20s, had a massive heart attack and died. So caffeine puts a lot of stress on the heart. So you've got emotional stress that it puts on the heart, physical stress it puts on the heart. It is really, really tough on the heart. So if you have any heart issues, you want to avoid caffeine as much as possible, because you don't want to be putting on your heart all of that stress and that overworking and stuff. So another thing is just high stress environments. Some people have difficulty with just certain movies, the stress, that the horror movies or anything like that, because it increases the stress, it increases the heart rate, and it really puts a stress on your heart. So the more that you put that stress on your heart, the more the heart has to work, and it becomes really difficult for it to maintain because you're changing the rhythm, and you're speeding it up or slowing it down or whatever. So any high stress environments, you want to avoid those as best you can. So another thing that is really hard on the heart are processed foods, really heavy foods, but also late night eating. The later you eat, your body takes 4 to 6 hours to get to a resting point. So if you're eating at 10 o'clock at night and then going straight to bed, your body doesn't have enough time to work through that food. And then it sits in your body, and your body has to digest it as well as do its resting and rebuilding cycle. So eating at 5 or 6 and not eating anything else after that is really amazing for your heart. It really helps your heart with its rest and rebuilding type of thing. So let's talk about, there are some warning signs that you don't want to ignore. So with the heart, like I said, the heart is the essential part. It is the movement of our body. Everything that our body needs comes through the heart. So if there are certain heart issues going on, you want to pay attention to them. Heart and the minerals and potassium, anemia, blood wash, those are really a preventative, but they're also a strengthener. So you strengthen your heart so that it can perform the way it's supposed to, but they're not a replacement for certain things. So whenever you have severe chest pain and pressure, my dad had a bad valve in one of the chambers of his heart, and he always said it felt like an elephant was sitting on his chest, the pressure, and it was really, really hard to breathe. Whenever you have that, it's probably time to go get some help, get outside help. If you're just going along normally and all of a sudden you're just completely out of breath and you can't breathe and you're just gasping for air and it feels like you're not getting enough, that is another sign that there's something going on with the heart. It's not pumping correctly and there's something going on, and that's when you should probably seek some, go looking for help. Also, when you feel that sudden loss of breath where you're gasping for air, but it's not getting into the body because the heart's not pumping the oxygen, there could be weakness, numbness, especially in the extremities, your fingers, your toes, your feet. That means that you're not getting enough blood to the extremities, which the heart is struggling, and it's time to seek for some emergency help. If you become really, really dizzy and start fainting, again, you're not getting enough oxygen, the heart's not pumping right. Time to seek some help. So the heart is amazing. There's a reason why it's the symbol of love. I love the heart. It's an amazing thing. So remember that it is your hardest working muscle. It is nonstop doing everything it needs to do, and it responds in an instant to anything that's stressful, scary. It instantly responds to whatever our body needs. So, give your heart what it needs so that it can keep pumping and keeping you alive. And think about some of the things we talked about, movement, hydration, rest, stress management. Look at how you can take one of those and put it into your life. Just adding one little thing will give your heart just that little bit of a boost, a little bit of something that it needs so that it can be healthy. It has been a pleasure sharing all of this with you. The formulas we talked about, you can find them at our website, drugfreehelpstore.com. And while you're there, you can get your copy of the Healer in Every Home guidebook. So it's been a pleasure visiting with you, and we will talk to you next time.
Listening to the Reality of Herbal Therapy podcast with Jim Applegate. Visit drugfreehelpstore.com to download your free Healer in Every Home guidebook and explore herbal formulas that support your health naturally. Be sure to follow the podcast, leave a review, and share it with someone who loves natural living as much as you do. Thanks for joining us, and remember, True healing starts at home.
It is not the intent of professional herbal instruction or any persons associated therewith to diagnose or prescribe. The intent is only to offer herbal information for your consideration. In the event you use this information without your doctor's approval, you are prescribing for yourself, which is your God-given right. But professional herbal instruction or any persons associated herewith assume no responsibility. The claims and statements made on this podcast have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.